Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut will be here for about the next hour, getting you ready for this upcoming Saturday's Nebraska Louisiana Tech game, 2:30 kick this week on BTN. And guys, we're 2:30 again next week against Michigan, back on Fox. That'll be the third time this year Nebraska has played a game on Fox, but a lot of news, a lot of things to get to, and what we like to call opening headlines here of the show. First and foremost, injuries. They kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, we knew some guys got nicked up in that game, but I don't think any of us sat in our chairs Monday for that press conference with Matt Rule around noon expecting to hear that both Gabe Ervin Jr. and Ramir Johnson are now out for the season. Ervin Jr. out with a hip, Ramir Johnson out with a shoulder injury, and all of a sudden now Nebraska is going back to Anthony Grant, who had some flashes last week but didn't even play a snap at Colorado. The tables have turned about as quickly, Steve Sipple, as they possibly can on that running back room.
It's really heartbreaking for the two veteran running backs. It's a tough blow for the team. I mean, this is remember what Rule Matt always says. They want to hit Nebraska or they want to hit opponents with body blows. Well, Ramir Johnson and particularly Gabe Ervin were body blow guys, and they're veterans. I talked a lot in the recent weeks about I love that room because they have three veteran guys. Gabe Ervin, Ramir Johnson, and Anthony Grant. Now they're down to one. I mean, they're down to one in a flash, just like that. Only 3 games in, they're down to one. Now, I happen to think the one is their best one, but
you've been strong on that since the beginning.
Yeah, and I've seen nothing to lead me to believe otherwise.
Other than a fumble with 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a fumble issue in August and one fumble against Minnesota where it got punched out, but he had 915 yards last year. So here we go. It's his show. Mm-hmm. That's what Rule said. It's Anthony Grant's show now.
I guess the good news is that he's no stranger to that. No. He had 70% of their carries last season from all their rushing attempts. So he's used to that kind of workload. I guess the concern is when you go back to last season and when he did have that kind of workload, we talked a lot about it. He seemed to slow down a little bit. That took a toll on him physically, where he was not the same runner for the first 3 weeks of the last half of the season. And so now, with that being said, they got to have other guys step up. Emmett Johnson seems to be the next man up in that conversation as maybe the projected new number 2. And I guess the good news is they really like him. They've been kind of talking about him for a while now. He's a second-year player. He hasn't carried the ball in a game before, but he's been on the field at kick return. He's a special teams guy that is going to get his shot now. And so, some young, fresh legs paired with Anthony Grant. And then after that, we'll kind of see what happens with the rest of that room. But, Quentin Ives, the freshman's been getting a lot of talk. He's got to wonder kind of the mental jump that's facing him right now to becoming a regular contributor. But they're still okay, I think. I'm with you. I think that Anthony Grant, as long as he holds on to the football, you can win games with him, especially if he can get some help behind him.
Well, and the pressure's off Grant now. I felt like he was under a lot of pressure in August because they were pushing Gabe Ervin Jr. so hard to take the job that he had a year ago. And, this guys react differently. I look at this room now, it's a race to figure out how do you find 200 yards. And it can't all be from the running backs. The quarterbacks are
there. You
involved.
Go. Yep.
Yeah. I think and that's where the quarterback situation with both Haarberg and Jeff Sims, I think you've got to figure out a way to utilize those guys. But can you, what's the most realistic number you can get out of that line of running backs? Can you get 150 a game? Can you get 130 a game? You got to get 100. That's a given.
Oh yeah.
But it's not a given. You got to have 200 rushing yards to win in this league for Nebraska.
Yeah. You said something. You said a couple things that are critical. But the big takeaway for me now that we're talking about it is, think about Rule's plan this year. The plan, how to win. It's body blows with the running game, have a defense you can lean on and win in the fourth quarter. Now, the question that we probably need to ask Matt Rule now, and probably should have been asked Monday had I been on my toes is, can you still have that plan without two of your veteran running backs that you were counting on heavily? Can it still be that plan? How much do you have to adjust? Sean mentioned it. The quarterback thing is huge. And go ahead, Rob.
I'll say that's the answer right there. Is I think regardless of who starts this game and who starts for the rest of the season, both of those guys need to play, Haarberg and Sims, and they need to play and they need to run the ball. And you saw what Haarberg can do. He's basically a running back out there.
He can
Jeff
really
Sims
run
is a
it.
physical runner.
They can really run.
And so you got two big, physical, fast quarterbacks that are essentially like running backs out there. And so I think that you utilize both of them frequently to where they become a big part of that answer of Anthony Grant and who. It's Anthony Grant, those two quarterbacks.
Can't be predictable.
Whatever. Oh, I know. But I think that kind of goes towards unpredictability to where you have a running quarterback that can be a dual threat guy. Like now you lean into that, I think, even more. Like the traditional running game, you get what you can out of it. But I think that zone read, that read option type thing, that has to be even more of what they base their offensive identity on going forward.
You're listening here to the Husker Online show as we talk opening headlines. Let's get on Heinrich Haarberg here now in that subject because he made his first start. And, I said this earlier in the week. I go, he looked like a guy knowing that this might be his only chance to make a statement. Because let's be honest, at a big Power 5 school, it's so hard for the third, fourth guy to come out of nowhere and get the job. There's so many other political factors with highly recruited guys that come in, transfer guys that come in, NIL, all these things. This was his shot, and he made the most of it where everyone's talking about Heinrich Haarberg to the point Steve Sipple has led the campaign to have a Haarberger launched, a hamburger. And, maybe in Kearney, where he's from, there's a great burger spot that reopened called The Cellar. In Kearney. Renowned basement, old school type place. The Cellar needs to come out with the Haarberger.
Yeah,
I'm going to say it right now.
It's got to be a double because he's a big dude.
Yeah,
it's got to be a double, and there's got to be some kick to it. So like a flamethrower burger.
Maybe Mike at Cunningham's could come out with the Haarberger.
Yeah, there got to be some kick. Like it better be. Oh, I don't know, just some kick. And Haarberger was impressive.
Haarberger. Now we're just like saying that.
In that game. He captured my imagination. He really did. I mean, because of a lot of different things, some intangible, some tangible. You watch him in warm-ups, he was the dude. You knew who was going to be the starter. And he handled it.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, you mentioned it. You kind of mentioned it all of this, the magnitude of this occasion for him, but he was loose enough. He handled it really well. He just handled it like a dude, like a leader. The guys played for him. He wanted it bad, but he didn't tighten up. So, and he lowers that shoulder into defenders, and that's a good look.
Yeah. So the question I have going forward is, can he continue to play with that reckless abandon as a guy that is trying to win a job every week? I don't think that's probably wise. Now, that said, he's a big guy. He's big, strong, and fast. And he's probably more suited to take on those kinds of hits than most quarterbacks. But that being said, you got to keep your guy healthy. And big guys get hurt
That's
too.
fair.
But to your point is when he was in those situations where things didn't go well, when the protection broke down or the receivers weren't getting open or whatever it was, he didn't force it. He ran and scrambled and got a few yards. He threw the ball away. He didn't look like a guy that was overwhelmed by that moment. For a player that is really getting thrown into the fire the way that he was, that was as impressive as anything for me.
Well, the turning point was in the third quarter. I mean, it was 14-3, and he was kind of in a stalemate. Once Northern Illinois kind of adjusted to him, there wasn't a lot of offense happening until Brian Buschini's punt gave them 7 points. The third quarter, where he made 4 straight third down conversions in a row on the best drive by far we've seen from Nebraska this season. 14 plays, 76 yards, nearly 8 minutes. They ran 23 plays in the quarter. A lot of that had to do with those 4 third down plays, most notably the throw to Pedoni, where he rolled it out to the sideline. I mean, that was a gunslinger play. That was an elite throw that we hadn't seen really Jeff Sims make the first 2 weeks.
I did not know what to expect, and he exceeded my I didn't expect what I saw. I mean, it's got to be very blunt. I didn't.
You thought more like it was going to be like an Andrew Bunch type deal.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe a little hesitant, but he wasn't. He was not hesitant. He was the opposite.
Mhm.
He was very assertive. He was very strong. He was in command. We always look at the same things, a lot of the same things: completion percentage. Did he take care of the ball? How did he run it? Also, I look at command. Was he in command of the offense? Were they continually having stupid breakdowns? No, they weren't. I mean, he had control of the huddle. He had control of the line of scrimmage. He was in control. He was ready, man. I mean, that was – so I think now can he play running back?
Yeah.
I mean, he probably looked good at running
He
back.
basically did last week.
Yeah.
But
He ran 21 times for 98 yards.
Yeah. So here's probably another X factor we haven't really talked about. Not only did he play hard and do a lot of the right things, guys were rallying around him. I think they kind of fed off of that energy.
He's
and
well liked.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's something to be said for that. When you get when you get your offense buying into you as the leader, there's that can take you a long way.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more offensive storylines here as we get you ready for Saturday's Louisiana Tech game. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut as we get you ready for Saturday's Louisiana Tech game set for 2:30 on the BTN. Before we get to that, though, this segment of the show brought to you by CHI Health. Reminder, September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. This year, it's estimated that over 288,000 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer and over 34,000 men will die from the disease. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, and I want to remind you to talk to your healthcare provider and when to begin your prostate cancer screenings. Men over age of 50 should talk with their healthcare provider about when to begin your screenings. Find your prostate cancer early means making your treatment easier. If you don't have a provider, visit chihealth.com to find a provider in a CHI Health clinic near you. And by the way, former Husker Tyler Evans just started at CHI Health. Remember, wide receiver out of Waverly?
How can he be that old?
He is a dermatologist there on 40th and Yankee Hill, so had to stop in there Sunday night for a family deal. There's Tyler right there, former Husker. Good to see Tyler making the most and getting going. But let's get into the offensive storylines. And we've already kind of hit on the quarterback and the running back, but I thought it was interesting to hear Marcus Satterfield say on Tuesday that Jeff Sims took 50 and even said 55% of the reps. Does that lead you to believe that Jeff Sims could be the starter this week?
Yeah. It could. He could. Of course he could, because Rule has said if he's healthy, he'll be the starter. Now, I just don't know if that's changed. I mean, it makes you wonder. Rule said that last week, that if Sims is 100%, he'll be with the ones. Now, again, the situation's changed. Sean, some of it will come down to how well is he moving, Sims. And then the other part, I thought the most interesting thing Satterfield said today was they're both going to play. I mean, they're both going to. Now, you could say, well, what did you expect? Well, to hear him say it means a lot. Now, how's that going to look? He indicated simultaneously that they'll both be on the field at times. I don't know what that's going to look like. Like, who's playing where? Who's playing quarterback and who's split out? I could see a situation where sometimes it's Haarberg taking a snap and Sims somewhere else, and sometimes where Sims taking a snap and Haarberg is somewhere else. And I don't mean on the sideline.
Mm-hmm. We've already seen Haarberg.
Yeah, we've seen that.
He's caught a pass in a game this season.
Yeah, against Minnesota.
I mean, he's run multiple routes. I mean,
but he's a quarterback.
That's in his repertoire. So, I mean, like, if you wanted to do these new wrinkles and find new ways to add more punch to your offense, that is very much already in the playbook, to where you could still roll with Sims at quarterback, that Haarberg could be under center, or he could be a skill position player somewhere else. So that gives you options. But I think just going back to how Rule has kind of responded to questions about this from the jump, he's insisted that Jeff Sims is their quarterback. And again, we don't know how much that has changed since Saturday.
Yeah.
If Sims is healthy, though, it would not surprise me if they give him the nod with an early rotation with Haarberg, though.
What did Rule say, though? It was interesting Saturday that we've got to play like we're a defensive-minded football team, meaning they've got to just build the right system to complement this defense, because it was their defense and the special teams Saturday that kind of set things up for that game to turn.
Yeah.
And then eventually, the way they play football wore down Northern Illinois. Now, can that work every week?
Can they? Yeah.
We saw the fullback, Barrett Liebentrep, played 9 snaps, but was outstanding. I mean, with the lead blocking and, how much of that is realistic against Michigan, though? Are they just going to eat that for lunch and just say, what is this? We're like, this is easy to stop. We've got elite NFL players. We're going to blow this up every time. So, it's going to be interesting how they build this, because I do think they want to keep building around this defense.
Which means what I hear when you say that is they just want to keep hammering it at people on the ground. That's the question. Can you still do that without Ramir Johnson, and mainly without Gabe Ervin, who is a hammer back? I mean, that's what he is, 6 foot 220, and he really wears on defenses. Now he's gone. I don't know what they're gonna. I don't know how that's gonna look.
Well, another thing with this quarterback discussion, who's going to play how much, is what we still need to see Jeff Sims do is take care of the football.
Yeah.
I mean, that could give you an answer very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
If he rolls out there and throws a pick or fumbles on the opening possession, it's Haarberg's show, in my opinion. And there's no going back after that.
Well, here's the deal. If Rule wanted to start Haarberg, all he would have to do is say, hey, guys, the variable, it came down to turnovers. Heinrich took care of the football. And
Though he did lose a fumble.
Jeff had, he did. And Jeff didn't. Now, Rule, though, has pointed out, and we need to give voice to this because we haven't yet, Heinrich played a much easier opponent in a much easier situation. Sims went into 2 hostile environments. You can debate all you want how good Colorado and Minnesota are. They're not great teams, but those environments were hostile.
Or like at Nebraska, how could you not get up for that environment? I mean, the way the stadium was set. I mean, look at this. I mean, look at the light show and the drone show. And I mean, if you're not excited and juiced up to play in that type of deal, and if that's about as good of a home field advantage as you're going to get.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was wonderful. So, and it was, let's face it, it was important.
And maybe they want to see Sims at home, see how he responds at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe he comes out and looks much like the guy we thought he'd be at home.
Yeah. Well, it depends what you thought he'd be. That's the thing. I mean, I think a lot of people were unconvinced that he was going to be different than the guy he was at Georgia Tech. The coaches had me pretty convinced he was going to be different. Now it's back to he's got to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
He's got to prove it now. I mean, because a lot of people are like, no, he's just a Georgia Tech guy that came in here with 30 touchdown passes and 27 picks. That's just who he is.
And another layer to this too, say Jeff Sims starts and doesn't even turn the ball over. What if he goes 3 and out? How's that crowd going to react? When Haarberg was announced as the starter on Saturday, the roar was notable. Like the crowd was all in.
It was Wyatt Mazur level.
Yes,
Wyatt Mazur. There's a name.
But like that's another element to it. Like we've seen when Nebraska can kind of eat its own a little bit, especially at the quarterback position. When a guy they've turned the page before the coaching staff, things can get uncomfortable a little bit there. So say they like what Sims does this week, he's healthy, they give him the nod. They better hope things go well for him to where that part of it can kind of go away right out of the bed. Because if he struggles early, turnovers or not, there's going to be some murmurs that will gradually build as long as the production doesn't happen.
Here's the other thing now. There's tape on Haarberg. So teams are going to make adjustments. Yeah. They're going to study him.
Point.
Remember when there was no tape on Luke McCaffrey?
Yep.
He looked pretty dang good. Remember when there was tape on him, what Lovie Smith did to him?
Mm-hmm.
Probably had one of the worst quarterback performances we've ever seen at Nebraska in a long time against a bottom team with a coach that got fired that year.
Yep.
That 2020 McCaffrey performance was a perfect example. Like they beat Penn State. Everyone thought, oh, McCaffrey. And then he just looked awful the next week against Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to be careful because these coaches make a lot of money in this league and they're going to make adjustments to Haarberg. And some of the things that were there for him this week, they're not going to be there against Michigan.
Yeah, and they make some money in Conference USA today, too. so Louisiana Tech will definitely have an advantage of seeing Haarberg on film.
All right, when we come back, we're going to shift the discussion now to defensive storylines. Tony White's defense really playing at a high level. We'll weigh in on that and more. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett as we talk defensive storylines. But before we get to that, once again, thank you to our great sponsor here for the 2023 football season, Bauer Underground. Bauer Underground is helping shape Nebraska's infrastructure future and is looking for members to join the team with open positions for laborers, equipment operators, aerial linemen, and foremen. Bauer Underground is searching for the best in construction. Visit BauerUnderground.com to learn more about career opportunities and industry-leading benefits, including competitive pay, employee-paid health insurance, dental, disability, vision, life insurance, 401k match, new top-of-the-line equipment, and a clothing allowance. No experience is needed in the underground utility world. They'll train you up with the right people, get you going in the field. Want to learn more? Visit Bauer Underground on Facebook or view their testimonials from current Bauer teammates. Hear more about their experiences, the company culture, and the importance of their work. Bauer Underground is family-owned with company crews and work sites across Nebraska. Wherever you live, Bauer has an opportunity for you. For more information, like Bauer Underground on Facebook or visit BauerUnderground.com. Come start your new career today. All right, let's get into now these defensive storylines, guys. 35 defenders played in that game Saturday night. 27 of those guys played more than 10 snaps. I mean, they are making it where no one's really having to play about much more than 30 to 40 tops. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen that. I mean, we saw a year ago, guys like Colton Feast were having to play 60, 70 snaps. Ty Robinson was playing that many snaps. They've done a great job of developing this group. And most importantly, it makes all these guys feel like they're a piece of this right now. And I think that builds good culture.
Well, and there you go, Sean. It's a philosophy. That's what Tony White said this week, that it comes down to a coach's philosophy. Some coaches don't like playing a lot of different players. They like rolling with a much fewer number than that. But I think you identified it perfectly. I mean, nobody asked White why they use that philosophy. I think nobody asked him because it's sort of self-evident. It's what Sean said, builds culture, keeps guys active. But also, by the way, boy, people don't want to hear this, but I'm going to say it. It's sort of a nod to the former coaching staff. I mean, they left them with a lot of players that can play because there's some of the transfer portal guys playing, and there's some new guys, freshmen out there. But it's a lot of this defense is led by returning players,
and it's got a lot of guys that are playing that didn't get a chance. I mean, they were good enough to play, but never got the opportunity because Nebraska just didn't rotate. And some easy examples of that are Javen Wright, Mekhi Bayer. I mean, guys that
Omar Brown
are clearly
Rashawn
good enough,
Singleton.
But they just couldn't get on the field.
Right.
And so by rotating as much, you're not only keeping your top line guys fresh, you're not only keeping that sense of urgency where you always have to be ready, you're providing legitimate opportunities for guys to show what they can do. And I think when you have that kind of renewed confidence in yourself, then that leads to your improved level of play on the field. And you're seeing that with guys that are really taking significant steps in their individual play and is collectively making for a really good
defense. It goes back to how they practice. More guys get reps and practice during the week. Not much standing around.
Nope.
And I think that helps you play better on Saturdays. And I think the other thing too is, and I've said this before to you guys, when you're worried about saving your job, you rotate and coach differently. And unfortunately, we've seen that a lot over the years where coaches' jobs are on the line and they kind of get blinders on and don't sub anybody on. And you're seeing linebacker. I mean, there's guys like playing like 70, 80 snaps at linebacker. I mean, there was a year where DiCaprio Boodle played like 1,300 snaps or just something ridiculous. I mean, it was something ridiculous.
No,
I mean, it was the most I'd ever seen. Yeah. Where they just didn't rotate. And now, with that said, defensive backs generally don't rotate a lot. It's the front seven guys. But they are coaching this team and this defense to develop for the future.
We can't emphasize enough the practice element of that. They don't have guys standing around because we bitched about it for years. I mean, we can't just gloss over that, right? How many times have we talked about, well, they got too many guys standing around at practice. They got too many guys. Bo, come on, Bo, you got too many guys standing around. Riley, God dang it, you got too many guys standing around. Frost. Now, finally, they are, they're using guys all the time, and they're not having guys stand around. So, and I do think it shows. It shows. It's an interesting. Now we got to see. I don't want to pump the brakes, but there's still There's still a lot of football to be played. You want to see if they can continue at a high level. The one thing I got to add here is they're not going to see a long line of great offenses. I mean, even Michigan right now is 61st nationally in total offense. I mean, you're going to play Northwestern, it's 125th. You're going to play Purdue, 68th or so. Illinois, who's in the 80s. There's a couple in there that are pretty high, like Maryland's high, but they haven't really played. They haven't played a very good schedule so far. It's this defense. It could get really interesting in part because there's not great offenses on this schedule.
Mm-hmm.
There's not. I think. Michigan probably will be better than Colorado's offense.
Up front, for sure.
Up front. But, they're not running it that well this year. They've been a little off. So I don't know. But anyway, I would expect high-level defense to continue to be played throughout the schedule.
Well, for me, for going into the season, the biggest question was the defensive line and whether they'd be able to hold up. And granted, they haven't faced, outside of Minnesota, a real known commodity as far as a rushing offense is concerned, but they've more than exceeded expectations. Nash Hutmacher is playing at all Big Ten level right now. Ty Robinson's playing the best football of his career right now. And then those young guys, whether it be Lenhart or Princewell, Blaze Gunnarsson, all of those guys are consistently elevating their game each week that they play. And so that, I think, when you look at why this defense has been what they have been, is because the defensive line has been as good as anybody could have hoped for.
One, the thing that's missing now is more turnovers, but a defensive touchdown. And that's coming. Yeah. That's coming. There's going to be
more turnovers.
That just quick strike defensive play from this unit where they score 7. And they need that. They need it more than ever right now with what's happened to their offense. So can they make that game-changing pick 6, fumble recovery for a touchdown, whatever? Because this team, to get a win in the Big Ten Conference for them right now, they're gonna need plays like that. To help them over the top.
That goes to special teams too. I mean, they need more explosive plays from their return
like
game.
A pump block.
They're not getting anything right now. I mean, they're not having like the crippling mistakes on the return game, but they're not getting, outside of Ramir Johnson, who's not playing anymore, they haven't gotten much. And so if you want to play like Iowa, you know what they do, how Iowa wins games? They get defensive scores and huge special teams plays.
Well, Kansas State does the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, their special teams play is outstanding. They return kicks and punts all the time.
Oh, what's more fun than a block punt?
Oh yeah.
That's a party.
And they went after
They're getting close.
They did go after one punt, I know, Saturday, and they were close. It was good to see Buschini back, though.
Yeah, Buschini punted the ball well against Northern Illinois after struggling against Colorado. It seems like we talked about it. Maybe he was getting spooked a little bit by the rush.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. Or that's what Bill Bush thought. So
I'll take his opinion.
Who knows?
They were getting in there pretty quick. And
they were.
You rush your routine up.
Right.
Right.
Seemed a little more settled against Northern Illinois.
All right. When we come back, it will take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, Abby Barmore joining us here for the mailbag. But Steve Sipple, before we get to the mailbag brought to you by
Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Sean, or anybody, if you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one spot. Finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram really has never been easier. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com. That's LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
All right. Now it's time for the mailbag. Abby Barmore, where do we start off this adventure?
Okay, first one. With the injuries at running back, do you think Nebraska would switch a player to running back or maybe use fullbacks more?
No, and Sybil brought this up to me. Like, what about Janiron Bonner?
And he shot it down summarily.
Well, because I look at the running back, you got to have that one cut.
Yeah, I agree.
Janiron Bonner, Liebentritt, they're not like that. The wiggle. We were talking about the wiggle that you see with Anthony Grant when he gets. They don't have that. I mean,
you don't know that for sure, but probably not. Bonner.
Bonner is a receiver.
I know.
That's basically a tight end that lines up as an H-back fullback. Big difference in saying he could play tailback, considering he broke his femur bone.
Well, then we're not going to
school.
suggest that Haarberg plays tailback or Sims plays tailback because it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I think you can get creative with zone reads and wildcats.
Okay. I wouldn't rule out things like that as quickly as you do.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even need to do that because
Not
you
yet.
have two big, physical, fast quarterbacks that you can rotate with. You've got a running back that's proven he can carry a heavy workload, so you don't really need to rotate all that much with him, assuming he's what you need him to be. And I think you got two young guys that maybe this is one of the silver linings to this whole situation is Emmett Johnson's going to get a chance. They really like him. Let's see what he can do. You got Quentin Ives, who was one of the kind of higher profile guys in that recruiting class that's going to get thrown into the fire, and he's going to get his opportunity, which could benefit him long term. So I don't think you need to make this more complicated than it is. I mean, I think
Not yet.
you still got a good running back room, and you still have two good running quarterbacks.
Quentin Ives, I'm very intrigued because when they had those all access shows, a look in on YouTube, there were a couple moments where you saw some plays from him. You're like, okay, this kid has something. And you got to wonder if he'll get some series in this game.
Oh yeah. You really wonder. He almost has to, I would think.
I think ideally they would
Do they
prefer
like
it.
him better than Emmett Johnson? That's the question.
Well, those guys will battle every day now.
All right, next question.
Okay. Does Jeff Sims have to be 100% for them to consider starting or playing him?
God, that's a question. I don't know. How do you know without watching practice?
Ankles are weird.
Yep.
Barry Switzer Gary Saddlemeyer said this on the show once, that Barry Switzer said on ankle injuries, he's like, if you have an ankle, you always will have it. Like it can linger the whole year. It's a matter of how you treat it, tape it, take care of it. I mean, and Robin's around a lot of it on basketball. I mean, ankles are funny. I mean, you can see guys have world-class performances on bad ankles and look like garbage the next week.
Yeah. And the fact that they linger as long as they do too, they're kind of like hamstrings to where they never, like you said, quite go away. You can manage them, and how well you're able to play through them is kind of the ultimate factor until you can give it the extended necessary amount of rest. And a week usually isn't good enough, especially if it's a high ankle sprain. High ankle sprain is weeks, plural, before you're even supposed to return to field.
It's a lot of tendons too.
Yeah.
It's not bones.
And so you might feel good, but then you step the wrong way, or you get hit, or it gets twisted. All of a sudden, you're back to square.
Oh, yeah, you feel that pain.
And it happens quickly.
Okay, so I've turned my ankle the traditional way many times in sports, but have you ever done it the other way, the inside way?
God.
I did
I
that
don't think so.
embarrassingly outside of Target once a couple years ago. And
Sure you want to admit this?
nobody
Did you go
felt
down?
bad for me. Yeah, somebody saw
Did you go down?
somebody saw me. Kedrick Ford, the basketball player, his wife Sally saw me. She's like, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was in a lot of pain."
How'd you do it?
But it hurt. Like that injury takes like 3 months on an ankle.
Were you wearing a boot?
Yeah, I wore a boot.
I
So
remember that.
I knew a foot doctor, and he goes, "You got to go get that looked at." Like it could be Dr. Robert Greenhagen, a friend of mine from high school. He goes, "Go get that looked at." And it's like a tendon inside, and ankles are weird like that. I mean, and so every morning I'd wake up and it was painful, but then once I started walking on it, got the blood going, it was fine. And that's how these ankle injuries are for Jeff Sims. I'm sure he wakes up and feels the pain.
Yeah.
Then you get going on it, and that's when you have to kind of learn how to tolerate. And
It's all about pain management and not having any setbacks to re-aggravate it to where you have to do it all over again.
Turning it inside though versus the other way, way worse.
I think I did turn it inside once. But anyway, I'm sorry about that, Sean.
It's like a rubber band tendon that I just stretched, and I got to wear a boot for a while. And
I kind of remember this now.
I hate wearing a boot because then everyone thinks like something serious happened to you. It's really not that. You're just trying to keep weight off it. And, what's wrong with your foot, Sean? Everywhere you go, it's like, are you okay? I'm like, God dang it. Like, I'm just not going to wear it because I don't want to deal with all this crap. Next question.
Okay,
Sorry,
what a
Sean.
transition, right?
Yeah.
Nebraska had a lot of official visitors this weekend, or just visitors in general. Where does Brandon Baker specifically stand after his visit, or any other guys really high in Nebraska right now?
So they actually had two. And we found out Jay Sean Ross, the 4-star pass rusher from Kansas City, was here for an official, not an unofficial. He's teammates with Keelan Smith, Will Smith's son, that was here, or Neil Smith's son. Excuse me.
Will Smith's son. I'll be damned. Fresh Prince.
But back to Brandon Baker, the visit was outstanding. It was his third trip for his entire family to Nebraska. They were here in March. They were here in April, now September. Gary Baker Jr., the older brother of Brandon that played D-line for Oregon, was here with his wife, and then the other Baker brother was here too. So there was 8 of them here. 7 of them that were here this weekend for the weekend. So it went as well as you can imagine, but I still think where Nebraska's at as a program compared to the other people involved. I mean, the NIL is going to be the NIL. A guy like this is going to get whatever the market value dictates, whether it's Texas, whether it's Ohio State, whether it's Nebraska. I think those are the 3 teams involved. Georgia to an extent was involved. Florida State was in there, but everybody to this point, every prediction nationally has him going to Texas, but I still think Nebraska went a long way with him to even get to this point.
Yeah, it was quite a spectacle when he came out.
Jim Pillen.
Yeah, that. And also, he was the last recruit out of many. I mean, and he came out with the cheerleaders behind him. That had to be planned, right? It was pretty cool, actually.
Well, then there was
you got the royal treatment,
and I don't know how staged that was, but Jim Pillen and him probably talked for a good 5 minutes,
staged
on the field. And they were like out on it was like almost a photo. I got a great photo of like Governor Pillen shaking his hand. And it was just like, whoa. I mean, how many other places is the governor involved? And there's how many other places is the governor involved talking to a football recruit?
Probably in this Southeastern Conference, it happens sometimes.
Yeah, but in Alabama, you got Auburn.
You're rolling the dice on that one.
You're splitting your votes in half.
Yeah,
you got Troy.
Perhaps.
You got multiple Division I programs.
Yeah, Troy fans would probably abandon you. I know you're right. No, that's a good point.
Arkansas, maybe.
What about Kentucky?
Maybe West Virginia,
Louisville, and Kentucky.
But even in West Virginia, you got Marshall.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, So I think a place like Nebraska, that's what's so unique about it. It's very hard to not find people in this place that are behind Nebraska football. So that was quite the moment. All right, Abby. Looks like we have time. Final question.
Okay, our last one. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but if a restaurant were to debut a Haarberg, what would you put on it?
You have to put pepper jack cheese on it, right?
Why?
Kick. Okay. I'm big on the kick because he plays with some kick.
Okay.
It needs to be a big burger with some kick.
How big? Quarter?
Double.
Half pound?
Double.
Half pound.
Yeah, I'm just saying double. I don't know how you guys. I've never eaten a double, so I don't even know what we're talking about. But,
could you char the Haarberg, like char it with some like blackened spices?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would do quarter pound Nebraska beef, topped with a split grilled schnitzel.
What's schnitzel?
Like a German sausage. With some,
because he's German,
with some sauerkraut and Limburger cheese. Really lean into the German. I mean, you get Heinrich Haarberg, you got to go German spin on that, right?
Sauerkraut
with some Dijon mustard.
Easy with the sauerkraut, though. Some people are just not going to get it because of sauerkraut.
People love
sauerkraut's amazing.
People love sauerkraut.
I mean, I like it, but I think some people go, I don't want it.
Well, then don't get the Haarberg. There's a combo at another restaurant.
God, I like your idea. I like your idea a lot.
We're not putting an egg on this.
That seems a little extreme.
Yeah. I don't know if eggs and schnitzel. I'll let that actually be pretty good.
No, I love your idea. Somebody's going to make that work.
Well, I think if he has another couple good games in a row.
One more. It'll happen.
It will get interesting.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Abby. You've been busy with volleyball too, so it's good to see them off to a great start, and you've got to see some very good matches the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Nebraska's played 3 ranked opponents out of the last 4 and beat Stanford in 4 sets on the road last week, and now they're starting the Big Ten this week with another couple of top 25 opponents. So it's really kicking in now.
Let's go. All right. Well, that wraps it up for the mailbag. When we come back, we'll talk Big Ten games last week and what to watch this week. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Before we get to the Big Ten games last week and this upcoming week, this final segment brought to you by Caldera Labman Skincare. You brush your teeth every day. Why is that? Because it's a healthy part of your day and you don't want bad teeth. I want you to take it another step and add skincare habits to your daily routine. I just did, and I promise you, you're never going back. I'm hooked on Caldera Lab. Use it this morning again, guys. Just simple, takes less than a minute to do. Helps keep your face look younger, fresher, cleaner. It's a 3-step regimen. It comes with 3 products. Like I said, it takes less than a minute to do. So add Caldera Lab to your daily routine as you get ready to go to work in the morning or go to bed at night. We've got a great deal right now for our Husker Online listeners. Get 20% off by visiting calderalab.com by using promo code Husker. That's 20% off at calderalab.com with promo code Husker. Thanks again to Caldera Lab for sponsoring the Husker Online Show. All right, guys, let's get into the Big Ten in the games last week. I'm going to fire through what we learned. Wisconsin takes out Georgia Southern. That was somewhat of a game for about 2 quarters, and then Wisconsin pulled away. You saw Braylon Allen have 94 yards rushing on 12 carries, 35-14. Louisville takes out Indiana 21-14, but I will say Indiana is playing, tough football. They're not just going away. Tom Allen's giving it hell. I know people think he's on the hot seat.
He is.
But they played Ohio State tough. They played Louisville very tough. Penn State goes into Champaign, wins 30-13 as they took care of the Illini. But that Illini defense gave Penn State a lot of problems. I mean, Penn State struggled to run the ball at a high level, and they were, it was a physical Big Ten game. Minnesota loses 31-13 at North Carolina. That is the Gophers' first loss of the year. Duke hammers Northwestern 38-14. Rutgers now 3-0. They play Michigan this week, by the way, and they take out Virginia Tech 35-16. Iowa, a 41-10 winner over Western Michigan, now ranked, now squarely the top team in the Big Ten West, just based on overall wins and losses for these first 3 weeks. Ohio State all over Western Kentucky, 63-10. Washington was a 41-7 winner in East Lansing. Days later, Mel Tucker officially fired, or at least in the process of now being fired by Michigan State. Michigan over Bowling Green, 31-16. And then Syracuse goes into West Lafayette, beats the Boilermakers for the second year in a row, 35-20. Syracuse 3-0. Maryland 42-14 winners over Virginia. Maryland 3-0 as they go into conference play undefeated. Guys, what jumped out to you about last week's games?
Michigan State being down 35-0 on their home field jumps out to me. They're in trouble, obviously. It's sort of a wreck there. But being down 35-0, now the other part of that is with a little national slant here. Washington's a national title contender, and they have maybe the most logical candidate in my mind right now for the Heisman, Michael Penix, who's got 3 400-yard plus passing games, 12 touchdown passes, 1 pick. They have a stat like potential picks. He's only thrown 2 passes that were even judged to be potential picks. He's operating at an incredibly high level. He's got 3 outstanding receivers to throw to. Washington is loaded up, boys.
DeBoer is a good coach.
Kalen DeBoer.
South Dakota guy.
Yeah, loaded.
Grew up a Husker fan. Followed Nebraska football.
Yeah, they're loaded. And I would not be surprised to see them in the Final Four at all.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to see Wisconsin kind of get going a little bit. That Washington State loss.
Sean, hold on. Georgia Southern had 6 turnovers.
Yeah.
Okay, 6 turnovers. I thought Wisconsin did turn it on in the second half, but man, come on. They got handed the ball 6 times.
Hey, how about
Drake? Some of that.
Drake May throwing for 414 yards on Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you wonder if Nebraska could throw the ball a little bit in that game, the type of plays they could have had down the field.
North Carolina couldn't run it.
Yeah, Minnesota, that game, it ended up being lopsided, but I thought they hung a little bit tougher than I expected. I thought Carolina was just going to roll them from start to finish. They put up more of a fight than I expected. And so I guess, for Nebraska, that bodes well that, they're not a complete embarrassment at this point.
How about Rutgers 3-0 for the 3rd straight year? Rutgers 3-0 for the 3rd straight year.
Western
Are
Temple,
they good?
Virginia
Or is Virginia Tech like
Virginia Tech's really bad.
Rutgers got a real defense, I believe. That's a real defense. You saw it last year. Remember we were there? Were we there last year? Or was that Tuesday? It was last year.
They
were
Nissan Titan trip.
Yeah. That's a hard-hitting defense. You saw it firsthand. They crunch you. I think it's real. I don't know about their offense.
All right, let's fly through this week's games. Don't have a lot of time here. Wisconsin at Purdue. That's an 11 a.m. Wow. Sorry, that's a Friday night game. Wisconsin at Purdue.
Oh, wow.
Friday night football.
Let's go.
Wisconsin, a 6-point favorite. Rutgers at Michigan.
Yeah.
Scarlet Knight,
about Rutgers.
24-point dog on the road. Illinois hosting FAU without Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson out for the season with an ACL injury. Illinois, a 14-point favorite only at home.
Wow.
Nebraska, 20-point favorite, 2:30 game. Michigan State is a 7.5-point dog against Maryland. That's an NBC game at 2:30. Akron at Indiana. Penn State is the game of the week on CBS. That's Iowa at Penn State, 14.5-point line. That's the Big Ten's package game of the week. Ohio State's at Notre Dame. That is the national game of the week. Ohio State, a 3-point favorite in South Bend, and then Minnesota at Northwestern. Only 11.5-point favorites are the Gophers on the road at a struggling Northwestern team. Guys, quick thoughts on this week's games. Obviously, Ohio State, Notre Dame is the big one.
Yeah, I mean, how Iowa does at Penn State, because right now they're the clear favorites in the West, but they're going to go into that game without their top 2 running backs and their number 1 tight end. I mean, they got beat up in that win last week, so they're going to get thrown into it.
They're going to get jackhammered.
We'll see.
Is that the whiteout game too?
Yeah, 14.5 points against Iowa.
That's
a lot.
Penn State covers. I mean, they're going to get
it's a night game.
Oh, they're going to get jackhammered.
And good weather there. I mean,
load up on Penn State. Just a little gambling advice. That's pervasive in our society. We can bring it to the show.
That's legal.
Go ahead.
Fitting on an Iowa game.
Oh.
Hey, Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Come on, there's a bunch of Iowa guys are going to have money on it.
Ohio State, Notre Dame. I mean, that's a de facto playoff game. I mean, that's the kind of game that if Notre Dame wins it, they're in the playoff discussion. If they lose it, they're out. Same goes. Ohio State can win their way back in if they lose this game.
Isn't it interesting, Sean, that when they go to 12 teams, it won't be as much as de facto playoff.
This is like this is like a quarterfinal round of 16 game here.
Yeah, but if it's a 12-teamer, you don't have to win this.
No, Notre Dame can lose this game and be good. But I'll tell you this year, all 5 Power 5 leagues feel like they have a team that can get in.
It's wide open. It's more wide open than usual.
And the SEC could get left out.
You could find 8 teams or 9 teams, I think, that could make the 4.
Georgia loses with that schedule. They have no strength of schedule. And you can't just give them the reputation spot if they don't have any quality wins. What if Alabama loses? The SEC is going to have a hard time.
Ooh, that would be amazing if they got left out.
Oh, they would lose their minds.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It ain't happening.
It won't. I mean, no. Georgia's got a clear path, but we'll see. Pac-12 looks like they have a path to one spot. The Big Ten's definitely got a path. Texas has got a path in the Big 12.
The Pac-12 has 3 viable candidates.
Now, Florida State loses to Clemson, they could be out of it.
Yeah. The Pac-12 has 3 viable teams right
USC,
now.
Washington, and Oregon.
Yeah. Florida State, you're right. Now, Florida State's at Clemson. That'll be tough. Florida State's got to play Miami too. Miami looks a lot tougher than last year.
Miami could play them their way.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, lots to keep up on. Make sure again you join us for our post-game show. We had over 15,000 views, guys, on the post-game show last week. So it was a late night, but a fun late night. If you're not familiar, we'll be on. Let's see. The game will end at 6. We're shooting for about an 8:30 post-game. So get on your YouTube channel. Follow us here on Husker Online. We'll put it on the podcast. You can watch the replay. But join us for the post-game live show later this week and all the great coverage on HuskerOnline.com. For Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, I'm Sean Callahan signing off here for another edition of the Husker Online Show.